And I kept on saying, Laurie, get up. You can't be found this way. Laurie, you've got to get up. You've got to get up, because my kids were due. They could have walked in the door at any time. I could not have them find me like this. And I was just like, get up. And so next thing I got up and I thought, oh, okay, good. I've got to clean up this mess. And I turn around and there I am laying on the floor. And I had jumped out of my body. And so now I'm telling myself on the floor, get up, get up, get up.
Hello, thank you for tuning in. My name is NELLA, and welcome to my podcast, Ethereality. Today's guest is Laurie Curtain. Her exposure to the other side has inspired a project that I personally believe has the capacity to shift our country and the world in a positive direction when it comes to the way we address ailments and illnesses within our bodies. Thank you, Laurie, for being here. Why don't you go ahead and start telling us about your near-death experience?
Yes, I've actually had two near-death experiences. The first one was in 1990. It was from a blunt force trauma to the head by someone that I knew very unexpectedly. I don't want to name the person, but it was extremely traumatic. I was hit over the head with an inch thick piece of glass. It was like 6 feet long. I guess I fell to the floor, but I don't have any memory of that. I didn't go through a tunnel. I didn't do anything. I was instantaneously out of my body into this, just the most soft white room that you could ever imagine. I mean, not even a room. I always envision it like standing on top of a dandelion once it's gone to seed. And so it's almost felt round, but the very outside of it was like a neon pink. So it never occurred to me that I'd gone to heaven, because I didn't think neon pink existed. I didn't know what I was experiencing at the time, and actually didn't for years later. There was this beautiful wind blowing through my hair, and I was in this long gown and it was flowing around me, and I could hear this beautiful music, and at the same time it was silent. It was so weird because there was this depth of silence, and at the same time it was like 1,000 angels singing. A voice came to me and said I had 2 exit dates, and this was one of them, and that if I chose to step forward, that the next exit date would be later, and that there was no time that I would die between that. But they didn't use die. There was no time that I would be given this opportunity again till my second exit date. In my mind, all I could think about is my kids coming home and finding me dead on the floor. And I just thought, no, I can't do that. I've got to go back, if only for my family's sake. And the next thing I know, I was in a void, a black void, when I said, no, I wanted to go back.
Was there an entity present with you?
No entity, but I could feel beings around me. I have heard this male voice almost all of my life. So it was the same male voice that I would just say it's Jesus. And it's a very loving, kind voice that I know that has warned me about different things through my life, like pull over, back up, and 18-wheelers going right over where I was parking. I was used to the same voice that was talking to me. Yes, it was the voice of God. I felt no pain. It was just the most beautiful, loving, peaceful, everything that everybody has ever talked about. Then I went to the void, and I could start to hear someone screaming. And the scream was getting louder and louder and louder. And I just thought, will you shut up? Please stop screaming. It was hurting my head. And then slowly I came to, and the person that had whacked me over the top of the head had me by the head and was pulling out just clumps of my hair. And I grabbed their arms and I said, stop, stop. Now, when this glass thing hit the top of my head, it shattered. And so I had fluid sac on the top of my head with shards of glass all through it. So I have glass and blood and things of hair all pulled out. And when this person finally dropped me, I lay at the bottom of our baby grand piano, like sort of half underneath it, all I can remember seeing is the oriental carpet and all my hair and stuff with the little tufts of skin attached to it. And I kept on saying, Laurie, get up. You can't be found this way. Laurie, you've got to get up. You've got to get up, because my kids were due. They could have walked in the door at any time. I could not have them find me like this. And I was just like, get up. I got up and I thought, oh, okay, I've got to clean up this mess. And I turn around and there I am laying on the floor. I had jumped out of my body. And so now I'm telling myself on the floor, get up, get up, get up. I managed to get myself up. I was just directing, clean up the mess, clean up the hair first.
So wait, you were telling yourself from outside of your body to get up. And then you
Yes.
said you managed to get yourself up. Did that include your spirit getting back into your body to animate
No.
yourself? So at this point, you are sort of commanding your body to do things and it is doing them.
Yes. And I stayed this way for 2.5 years on and off
Wow.
and following myself around. And so I gotten down on my hands and my knees and I was like, Laurie, you must get up now. And so finally my body started reacting to what I was saying and cleaned up the hair. And I was like, you need to take that in the trash and bury it. The kids cannot find this. So I followed myself through the house and out in the driveway. And I was like, stuff it down further. And I really was telling myself every step of the way what to do.
I have interviewed people before who have said that they were outside of their body while their body was animated. Like they were still doing things, yet they were like disconnected. In my mind, I feel like it's the soul within the body that animates the body. Like we are residing here, and this body is like our tool to navigate in the world. And it's just really interesting to reflect on the possibility or the phenomena of
Yeah.
how you can have a body that's still animating without your spirit inhabiting it.
Right. Well, I think you're not totally disconnected. I think you always have a higher self that's in a different realm. And I think that's where we pick up on the universal consciousness. That higher self is what's tapped into it, that feeds down into who we are. So my whole thing is you have God, and then you have your higher self, and then your baser self. This is something I have not been able to find anyone who's had this experience to talk to. And I would love to have someone to speak to about this, because it sort of has baffled me. I didn't even understand. Like, I never pressed charge against the person because I was not in my right mind. I was a totally different person, that person that was working outside of myself. I did things that I would not have done. I said things that I would not have said. I would sit there following myself around going, oh, no, 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 don't say that. Or don't wear that outfit. Or you need to cut your hair. I really was just in conversation externally, like, come on, like, get your act together.
Was that really frustrating?
It was frustrating, and I was in such a different layer of consciousness that I didn't really get it until I was really back in my body and pretty much stayed there, which I think up until maybe 4 years ago, so 40 years, even when I did my deep meditations, if I closed my eyes, I was slightly off. It always felt like maybe my left eye was behind my nose and my right eye was out further than my body. So it has taken an enormous amount of effort when I close my eyes to get my consciousness behind my face, if that makes any sense.
Centered. You have to
So
find your center.
yeah, so if you close your eyes, now it's like my consciousness is right behind my eyes and right behind my nose. I really had to force that to be present totally within myself.
So when you were outside of your body for this extended period of time, did you feel like it was strange? Did you have the awareness that this was unusual and you should figure out how to get back in?
No, I had no conscious thought of that. I was just following myself around, trying to keep that earthly body out of trouble and not making big mistakes. But when I jumped back into my body is when this person still was in my life for a little bit, was still acting violent towards me, or I was either really happy or really traumatized, and then I'd be in my body. Or I was a deep sea wreck diver. When I went diving, I was in my body. I loved scuba diving. I was a cave diver. When I would put on that suit and the regulator and all this stuff, my gear, and I'd jump into that ocean 28 miles out, or I'd be pulling myself down into some deep cave, I was in heaven because I was so fully present in my body at those times. But then later, I would just jump right back out again.
A friend of mine who had a near-death experience, Shauna, she was in a coma actually, and she ended up bouncing in and out of her body a number of times. And she said one time when I was interviewing her that I commend everyone who actually stays in their body because it's not an easy thing to do. So I think that that's something that you guys could totally relate on.
Yeah. And so it was a wild experience. And it wasn't until I went to, it was a Coptic conference in Tennessee. Coptics will, like, it's the first Christianity, and they will put on free offerings of holistic health and people giving lectures and stuff. And I went down to this Coptic weekend, and there was a lady on stage that said almost my exact story. She'd been hit by the head, she had a near-death experience, and she jumped out of her body. Now, I never got to talk to her about it, but she lived in and out of her body on and off for years before she solidified into one being again.
Do you remember who that was?
I do not. A year or two ago, trying to find the whole itinerary and see if I could find her name again, but I didn't, because I didn't really see how important it would be to me. I was more like, oh my gosh, listen to this. This is my story. Like, I was so excited, and I was, oh, that was a near death experience. I think because I know I had brain damage. I know I probably could have easily had bleeding on the brain because it did cause me to die. But I was so unconscious about what was going on in this earth that I had no consciousness of going to the doctor. It's like people later said, well, why didn't you go to the emergency room? I think there's no thought of going to the emergency room. The me that was living outside of my body was not saying things like that to the body, like go to the emergency room, call the police, do something. I had none of that. It was more taking care of me, like, you need to sit down, you need to get the glass out of your hair. Like, it was that type of thing. So I never did call the police. I never did go to the doctors. It wasn't until years later that I even thought about anything like that. And so that was what was so interesting, but it solidified so strongly for me, even though I didn't see it as a near-death experience. I didn't even think of it in those terms. If someone had said something, is this a near-death experience? I would have been like, oh, that's what that was. But near-death experience were just being talked about by Moody at that point. And so it was such a new topic. No one really had the words for it, which now, if that happened to me, of course, I would think that's a near-death experience. But then I realized, like, I'd always been a Christian, born into the Christian faith, believed in God, went to church every Sunday, but I didn't have that same concept of, wow, we are really a spiritual entity outside of this meat suit that we put on. There was never question in my mind ever again about God or about being able to go to heaven or anything like that. Like, when I went to that room, this amazing thing with the fluorescent pink around the outside of it, it was everything that you can ever imagine, feeling of peace, of acceptance, of beauty. The air has life. You know, we have these five senses, and they're just five senses to us. They're not alive. When you're in the other world, they're alive. Hearing is alive. It has texture and feeling, and smell is alive, and sight is alive. Right here, we just see. I see you on the screen. We see the computer. But in the other world, when you're seeing, it has a dimension that, in a livelihood, like the particles, you can see the particles and they're alive. And it's so hard to explain what that is like. And there's a oneness with it all. It's very odd. Hearing, sight, smell, touch, everything is integrated into your body in such a different way. And you definitely have a body. You have a body. And I don't feel like it looked that dissimilar to me. Now, I never looked in the mirror, so I wouldn't have known, but but it felt exactly like me. So that was my first near-death experience, and it took years for me to really stay in my body for any length of time. My second near-death experience happened in 2011. I got the swine flu. I got sicker and sicker as the days went by, and I knew I was dying. I was laying there, and my husband knew that I needed sleep. We were taking care of our grandson because our daughter just had a new baby. He was driving Aiden to school. I thought, if I can't force this body to roll over and say something to him when he gets back from driving Aiden to school, then I will not be alive at the end of the day. And that absolutely was true. He came upstairs trying to be really quiet to get changed to go to work. And I was like, this is my chance. And I forced myself to roll over. And I said, get me to the hospital. And I don't remember anything else. I guess he had to dress me. We're only a mile from the hospital. I remember briefly being in the emergency room and then briefly being in the intensive care. All four lobes of my lung were filled up with this bloody mucus, and then a massive infection around the lining of my lungs and in the cavity that holds the lungs and the heart. So it's very interesting. When I arrived in the intensive care room, I obviously was already partially in heaven because I was in this beautiful, great big blue room. It had all this woodworking, had this arched window that was 12 feet high. I could see the trees and the birds outside and beautiful curtains and oriental rug. And that's the room I landed in. In the 5 days that I was in intensive care, it never looked a moment different than that ever. And it wasn't. It was a little tight, tiny, cubed, white, sterile room. But I remember thinking, I didn't know Abingdon Hospital had such beautiful rooms. I was laying there dying, thinking like, wow, they really upped their game. And not at all what was happening. So I wasn't really in that room. But then when I was leaving my body, sometimes I would go to the other world 3 times in an hour or two. I just could not stay in my body. It was way, way, way too sick. And it felt like your foot being pulled out of a too tight, uncomfortable sock that you've worn all day. And then I was just free and floating. All I can remember thinking is, this is the grace of God. This is the grace of God. And I would just float up to the ceiling, and the buzzers and the things would be going off. And I never rolled over and looked at my body, maybe because I didn't have to, because of all the other times that I'd been outside my body and watched myself. I remember seeing my husband there and the doctors, and then floating up right through the ceiling. I was just in this beautiful blue, absolutely beautiful blue. Same thing is the air is alive with sound and texture and everything. And the silhouette, I don't know if it was the Lord, if it was an archangel, I don't know what it was, but it was a silhouette with the light shining behind him. And I was just encased in this blue. He was like, when you decide to stay on the last time, you made a commitment that you were going to do something, that you had a different exit plan, and this is not your exit. You haven't fulfilled your mission, basically. He said, your body is dying, but we cannot let that happen. And he would give me these little like shot glasses of, it looked like liquid mother of pearl. I would take that, and then I'd be back in my body again. I could only stay there, then I'd be back in the other world. And so during this time, I was downloaded with so much information that I didn't understand for years to come. I would all of a sudden know these things or understand these things or have premonitions about stuff. It was all from that time. Like, oh, okay. Now, like I would remember, oh, I remember being told this. The information wasn't there right from the beginning for me just to tap into. And I think one of the things is I was so sick for so long. Then the Lord started instructing me and said, well, I'd been a doula for 28 years, a lactation consultant. And so I'd helped babies come into this world. I absolutely loved it. I had done homeopathic, essential oils. I was really into the healing arts, but I had never done energy work. And the Lord told me, you were to do energy work. And then when you finish learning as much as you can about energy work, you're going to be a hospice caretaker. I had never even seen a dead body at that point, and I didn't want to see a dead body, wasn't into dead bodies. And the Lord and I actually, through many times going in the other world, had this argument back and forth. I'm like, nope, nope, no, this is not for me. He's like, yep, yes, it is. Nope, no, it isn't. And I was appalled at the whole thought. So you really are still yourself in the other world. So if you'd be appalled at something down here, you're appalled up there. And so I really just didn't want to do this. And then finally said, okay, I'll do this for you. So I spent those 5 days in intensive care going back and forth to the other world, and then 5 days in critical care. And then they just released me, and I was still so sick. I couldn't breathe. I could just lay there when I got home. It wasn't until later that I really started feeling better. And I'm an artist, so I started painting all these messages. In the video, you can see it's called The Messengers, and it's about that divine feminine releasing the messages that are to come into this earth within the next like 20 years. And then I have another painting, that a new heaven and a new earth, and it's a divine feminine, and how the divine feminine is going to come and change the concept that brings on the new heaven and new earth. We really do have to change our concept of who we are as beings and how we are. And so I painted a series of 5 or 6 of these paintings. And then I was sitting on the couch, and the Lord says, get up. He showed me a picture of my brain. So I had a lot of conversation, direct conversations with the Lord that never, ever stopped. And I still do. And so the Lord's like, get up. And I want you to go to this thrift store. He showed me a picture of the thrift store, and walk to the back and get some books. So I got up, drove to the thrift store, went to the back, and there's all these books. He said, I'm going to direct you. Just reach out your hand, start plucking books off the shelf. I did that. He said, don't even look at the titles, just pay for them. It's like 50 cents a book, cost me like $4.50 for all of them. And I get back, and there 3 of them are doing hospice, books written by Daniel Brinkley, who had a near-death experience. And he was told that he had to start a hospice unit, and he did. And it's called the Twilight Brigade. This is after I'd done all my healing training. I called up the Twilight Brigade, and they just happened to have 2 openings the following weekend, and then weren't going to be another one for another year. And Daniel Brinkley, who hadn't taught it for 10 years, was teaching the thing. The whole thing that like totally came together.
Love that. It's almost like this was planned.
Yeah. So then I started doing the laying on the hand. So I became a Reiki master teacher and was teaching classes. I also became a reconnection healer. Mm-hmm. 2 totally different ways of healing with energy.
You were very resistant to beginning this journey. After you had begun, did you find it really fulfilling?
Doing the hospice was one of my favorite jobs I ever had. I would have to say, if I went back to do one thing, I would become a hospice caretaker. Now, the other thing the Lord told me was, once you learn energy work and once you do hospice, something's going to come through you that's going to change the planet in some way. I always thought, what the heck does that mean? So I couldn't even go there with my thought process. I thought, well, just do what the Lord says and it won't matter. And whatever happens, happens. So I actually had my friend Brian laying on the table, and my sister Susan and I were doing energy work on Brian. Brian I got to know because I was their dually 2 years beforehand, and a 63-hour labor. So we really got to know each other. Brian got off the table having never had energy work done, and he said we should make a Reiki app. At that point, the top of my head like opened up, and the Lord downloaded this whole entire company. It's called 11. We connect holistic practitioners and clients together. And what the Lord was telling me was that when you are sick, you do not care what the world is doing. You don't care who's in government. You don't care what the schools or teachers are doing. You just don't care. You care about being sick. The room becomes very small, isolated to just your little surroundings. You care about, do you have the energy to go to the bathroom? Can you get yourself a cup of tea? So the sicker we get as humans on this earth, the more evil can overtake what is happening, because we give up our right to what it is because we're too sick to care. So if you think of when Jesus was on the earth, what 90% of what he did was laying hands on and healing people. So he had told me very particular through this whole process is that was his goal. Now, this did not come from me at all. Like I didn't come up with the notion. This is 100% from the Lord to do this. So what we're doing is connecting holistic practitioners and clients together. We want to have the largest database of holistic health in the world. Like, what do you do when you have the flu for yourself and your family? What does a mom do in the middle of the night and the baby's crying and she has a massive breast infection? Well, a cabbage leaf. Put a cabbage leaf in your bra and it draws out all that infection. If you have a bad wound on your leg, you can put a cabbage leaf on it because a cabbage leaf will draw out the impurities and infection in your skin. But how do
Are you sure we don't need extremely harsh chemicals that were like created in a lab made from byproducts of extremely toxic materials?
That's right.
I feel like we need that. No, just kidding. I absolutely love that. It's wild, actually. My mom, she has been foraging and learning about medicinal plants now for a couple of years, and I've learned so much just walking in our area and looking at, oh, that plant's medicinal. Oh, that plant's medicinal. Oh, you can chew on that yarrow root when you're having a toothache. It's just like there's medicine all around us, everywhere.
Want to make money of it. It's the whole point. It's the pharmaceutical companies are trying to get you sick. They give you one medicine to cure one disease, and the medicine you're taking creates 3 other diseases. So then you take medicine for that. It's the rich get richer. If I get in a car accident, I break my leg, take me to the hospital. That's what allopathic is for. Set my bones and then send a Reiki master and give me a poultice of something holistic. And so that's what it is. It's like, how do we change the mindset of humanity? And that's what our goal is. We've been working on this project for years now, and we are finally launched. We don't have practitioners on there yet, but that's what we're going to do in the next couple of weeks is just really beat the bushes and get the word out that we're here. Because the whole thing is not to make $1 million off of this, although we will make a lot of money, but how do we support the world in becoming healthy? If we have a healthy body, we're going to have a healthy nation. We're going to have healthy rivers. We're going to have healthy skies. We're going to have healthy food. It's when the sicker we get, the sicker all of that comes with us, because then people can do whatever they want to pollute our waters. And when we feel bad, we want someone to give us a magic pill. So when the doctors say, take this pharmaceutical, we'll take it because we just want to get feeling better, and without realizing the amount of side effects that these chemical things made into labs. And you can go literally into your yard, the plantain, not the banana, but little round plantain root. If you get stung by a bee, grab a plantain leaf, chew it up, put it on there. It can take it away in moments. Dandelion root does the same thing. You have to do a little bit more with that, with washing it and grinding it, but it has the same type of thing. So one of the things we'll be doing is collecting all the holistic things from around the world. So we want people to contact us. What do you do? What did the grandmothers do? We want to be able to travel around the world to the little old babushka women that are leaving this world at this moment that still have that ancient knowledge of healing, and start collecting all that information and put it on our site. And it's totally free to join our site. You can just go and you can read all our blogs and go through, peruse our healing library and help it grow. And we want to create a community. And when we get up enough money, we want to create our own holistic hospital. How do you treat the whole body? That's what the Lord is showing me through this near-death experience, is stop going to a doctor that for the sinus infection, you have all this mucus. What are you eating that's causing mucus? Do you have mold in your house? You go to these doctors and they don't ask you any of those questions. They don't ask you, do you have a moldy house? They don't ask you, are you allergic to things that's causing mucus? No, let's just give you some chemicals to try to dry up the mucus. And that's not healing. that's masking. And what it causes is that to go internal, and that's what's causing the cancers and other diseases, because we're just masking the symptoms instead of curing the disease. So that's my goal in life, is to get people as healthy and as happy and actually bring heaven on earth. Like, how are we going to create heaven on this earth? And it's not by polluting our skies, our waters, our rivers.
I actually know somebody. I met her at a natural spring.
Yeah.
She posts hundreds of things that are informative about holistic health stuff. And there's like a bunch of people following her like Telegram
Yeah.
account. I feel like I should connect you guys.
Oh, I would love that. Anybody. We are trying to create a community. This is not, oh, here we're 11. Aren't we cool? We're going to do this all. No, it's like, let's get the world in on this. How can we get people? We want to go globally eventually, but so many countries have laws about different holistic things that they're allowed to do. So once we get settled in this country, then we'll have to go country by country and discover their laws. And then the next step, we're going to do a marketplace. Like, how do you find the tinctures and the natural soaps and all that type of stuff? So we'll have a whole holistic marketplace, and then eventually an app. So it would just be an easy app to do. So yeah, I want everyone to come join us and be part of that. Let's change the world together.
If you're getting any value out of this podcast, please hit that like button and subscribe. Also, if you've enjoyed my content before, or maybe you're new here but you like it, drop a comment and let me know you're here. I would love to get to know my audience. Thank you for listening, and let's get back to the content.
So when the Lord said, learn energy work, I understand what the Lord was trying to tell me then, because everything is energy. Absolutely everything is energy. Like, you can tell when someone has bad energy and they come in the room, it changes the whole room. Or someone has dynamic energy and they walk in the room and they're like the life of the party and everyone just wants to be around them. You can pick up something is like, ooh, or clothing or things. Everything emits energy. And that's one of the things that the Lord has let me see. So to get back to that Barbie doll pink thing that I saw in the first near-death experience, I see that now. I don't know when it's going to come on. I can't actually make it happen, but I will be sitting in my living room. I'll look outside and the whole sky is pink. And neon pink, and the trees and everything are all emitting this purple color. And I'll walk outside. It is unbelievable. It's like being in some space between here and heaven. And I'll be driving down the road and it happens, or out to dinner at a cafe and it happens. And I'm just gawking, like my mouth opens, like, oh my gosh. Or I can all of a sudden the stripes of energy, like when something's happening, all of a sudden you can see energy just shooting across the sky, crisscrossing everywhere. And I also teach people to see energy. If you just sit there and look like at a beautiful blue sky and fuzz out your eyes, at first you're going to see just like the floaters in your eyes. And then after that, it almost like you're looking into it. You'll see, it almost looks like sperm. You'll see these little things that are wiggling and moving around. And then if you really just get into that, you'll see that it isn't chaos. It looks like chaos at the moment, but it's all the energy that's floating through the sky, everything. And you will see that it all gets together, and maybe we'll go feed one plant. And then you'll see it start coming out the tip of another tree, and it feeds a branch on a tree that's neighboring it. So you actually see all this energy is moving. It has a life, and it is our life force energy. It's what keeps us alive. And we're absorbing that and putting it off all the time. And it all depends on what our state of being is. Like, if we're positive or negative, we're putting off these negative vibes that other people, and negative energy other people are absorbing. But once you really get in tune to that, then you can start seeing the auras around the trees. It really looks, if you watch the movie Avatar, you can really get to that point where you can see all the plants glowing, and it's pretty incredible. So I've taught many people how to do this. And this is all comes from the Lord after my near-death experience. Near-death experiences are for not just the person. When I had my near-death experience, no one wanted to hear about it. friends and family, they don't really want to hear about it. It's something that makes people stand off a bit, like, oh yeah, really? Well, maybe you're hallucinating and all this stuff. But for the rest of the world, it's almost like you're not a prophet, but you're prophesying what can be. And the Lord says he'll never do anything without his prophets first. And so everyone who has the opportunity, like you, Nell, are giving people this opportunity to do, you're changing the world because you're giving them a belief that we are more than what we think we are. We are eternal beings that have a destiny and a purpose. We're just amazing. The thing that I got from the other world is we are all amazing. And when you go to the other world, so you really get to see that you're eternal. Like my religious upbringing did not have anything to do with past lives. Absolutely not. That was not a thing. And so I was really against past lives until 2011. And then I was showed, oh no, you have past lives. Like you come down repeatedly over and over again to heal, to grow. Maybe you've had 3 lives and you didn't learn to be compassionate. Well, you're going to go down to another time to learn compassion. We do this to fulfill our destiny, to fulfill that bigger part of ourselves. It's actually such a beautiful gift where I didn't get it at all before, but I totally understand it now. I love it. I actually do past life regressions, and it's one of the best things that I do.
You said that family and friends don't really like hearing about a near-death experience. When you tried talking about it, how did your family and friends respond to it?
Friends usually go, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. They don't ask questions. They don't want to know. Certainly not all friends. I've talked to many of my friends in depth about it. My husband didn't want to hear about it at all. He sort of had abandonment issues from it, like, oh, you were going to leave me, you were choosing to go, because I gladly would have stayed. First time I wanted to come back to be with my kids. The second time I had no thing that I wanted to come back at all. I was like, I wanted to keep on going, and nope, Lord just stood there and was like, you can't. You've got to basically finish your mission. So that was hard every time I was sent back. I was like, come on, please, can I go? And so I think there's a thing, a lot of near-death experience people end up in divorce.
Yeah.
And
high percentage.
High percentage. My husband and I certainly went through a very rough time after that. I don't know what it is about it. We've had long talks about it. What is it about someone almost dying that causes the other person to shut down? Because that's what it is. Because I've had a girlfriend who had a near-death experience, almost bled to death. Who she did. She died in the hospital, but her husband had the same exact thing. He just completely pulled away, didn't want to talk about it. So that's hard. I'm not sure why that happens.
Well, I mean, you said that you had a Christian upbringing. Was he Christian as well?
Yep.
That makes sense.
And some people are fascinated, but I rarely by friends and family get asked. But if I'm in a group and someone knows about it that I don't really know very well, they will ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, you had a near-death experience. Oh my gosh, tell me about it. I get that from my inner circle, not so much, but that second or third step out, more acquaintances or people that you see every once in a while, they are fascinated.
There's actually a verse in the Bible that reminds me of. It's Mark chapter 6, verse 4. Yeah, it says in the NIV version, Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives, and in his own home.
Yeah. And that's what I have found. And it's gotten better through the years because that was in 2011, but it certainly wasn't easy. And doctors and nurses don't want to hear about it or anything like that I found. I think it's gotten better because so many people are having near-death experiences. And I think the Lord never wants to take away your freedom to what you can believe. And I think in this way, you can choose still to believe or not to believe. But the more people that are having near-death experiences, the more they get to understand that there is another world, that they don't have to be afraid, that they are going to see their loved ones again. One of the things I was shown was when you have your life review, which I didn't have a life review, but I was shown what a life review is for, is it's never about what was done to you. So if you were molested as a child, or someone used to beat you up, or your mother was nasty to you, there's none of that when your life review is always about what you did, not who did something to you. It doesn't matter that he hit me first scenario. It's always about how did you react? How did you behave? What did you say to someone?
Because
And
that's the only thing that you're actually responsible for.
right. And so many people get caught up on the fact that they were abused, not to discount that, but you can't live in that. You are so much more than an abused human being. So if we talk about energy, the state of hell is an energy. And so when people see their life review, and if you take some of these people, they're doing satanic worships that are just totally abusing children and stuff like that, you have to experience through what you did to the other person and how it affected people outside of them. It's like 2 generations of people. So if you abuse a little kid and that kid grows up, so you get to feel what it was like to be abused, you get to be in that body. How many people, if they have this perpetual thing that they did over and over again that was just evil, can they actually withstand looking at it and being in that state? So you're in your own state of hell. And until you can go through your life review and forgive yourself and forgive others, you don't really go on. You're stuck in that. So you might only get to a few abuses before you go, like, I can't look at this. Well, guess what? Until you can look at the whole thing of how you've been. So you're just in that perpetual state of evil of what you did, but it takes just your willingness to look at what you did, forgive yourself for what you did, to be able to move on again. There's no time or space in heaven. So could that be 1,000 years of earth years that you're stuck there? Could it be 10,000? Could it be 2 months? Could it be 10 days? There's no time constraint. So you're in that state until you don't need to be in that state anymore. One near-death experience where a woman she thought she was gone for 3 months and was in a state of hell because she couldn't forgive herself for what she did. But she was only dead for 20 minutes.
So I'm not sure I'm understanding correctly, because you said that life reviews are only for you to recognize what you're responsible for. But I've heard a lot of people tell me about their life reviews and how they were able to witness something that somebody was doing to them, not necessarily their reaction, but they had the awareness, the multidimensional awareness of the experience that this person that was harming them was having in that moment, how they were feeling, why they felt justified, everything that led up to their decision to abuse, how they were harmed in their upbringing, and being able to see inside of the other person's experience was what gave them, the near-death experiencer, the capacity to have compassion for the people in their life that had abused them.
Right. That's not okay. Let me word it a different way. I'm saying that you don't get to experience, say, someone abusing you, and then you get to behave badly from that.
So the abuse that you receive doesn't justify your reaction.
Right. So what the Lord was showing, what you're talking about, is that person needed to see that, experience that person's life in order for forgiveness for themselves.
Right.
That whole scenario there was about them being able to forgive that person before they could move on. Because if you can't understand where that person was, but it's never really about the other person. The Lord is showing you that just so you can release it. It's all about how you behave. So it's about you releasing it. If you couldn't release it, then there's no purpose in seeing that the person was abusive towards you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's what I was shown. It's like you're not going to go to the heaven, you're not going to go to the other world and see that your father was raising you and you get to experience him you, and then you get to see how you reacted out of that. Now, if you need to know why that happened to have compassion and forgiveness, yes, you could go into that. But it's more like, what did you do? What did you say to that little kid in the playground that made him cry? Even in elementary school, what did you say to your husband when something went down? It's always about us. So if you're shown something like that, it's to be able to forgive. It's about that person forgiving and having compassion in order to move on. That's the thing, is like everyone should work on forgiveness all the time. If you don't forgive, you're only injuring yourself. And forgive doesn't mean forget. When you are able to release that, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. You just say, okay, God, this is yours. And then you just send them love and light. There are plenty of people out there that I know that have done so many unpleasant things, and they're in my prayers. I send the white light of the Lord to them. I'll kiss them goodnight in their sleep. I'll put my hand over their heart and do a blessing on them, because more negative energy does not need to be sent to people that are in a negative state.
Absolutely agree with you. Yeah, we have enough negativity in this world. One other question I wanted to ask was, it's 1:11 right now. This is the right question to ask, apparently. So you said that you had a religious upbringing, Christianity, and then after this experience and the insights that you've picked up from integrating your near-death experiences, how would you say that your religious or spiritual beliefs look now versus how they looked before this happened?
That's a great question. And so before, I felt like everything came outward towards me to the Lord. I didn't feel seen. I was almost an invisible entity to the God. I didn't feel like I had a personal relationship. Like I did the praying, I did the thing, I went to church, I read the Bible, I did all this stuff. So it felt like from me going outward, I didn't feel like there was a flow back and forth. That totally has changed. When I talk to the Lord, quite often I say Adonai El Roy, which means the God who sees me. That is what changed, because I feel and have the experience of being totally seen, and that the Lord knows the number of hairs on my head, which you read that in the Bible, and I just didn't have that same concept. And I think I needed that in order to really bring 11 on the earth, because I need to know that the Lord sees me. And that was my own thing. Like the Lord's been talking to me since I was a little kid, but I had to shut it down, because if you hear voices in your head, you're crazy. If you have someone talking to you, that's insanity. That's what my mom always told me. And then it's like, no, when you're clear and the Lord speaking to you is one of the most profound things that can ever happen to you. I had this experience where I had torn everything in my shoulder, and I dislocated my shoulder. I was strapped up into not a cast, but a sling and everything, with my hand tied up around my neck, not to move anything. I was in so much pain. Even if someone was breathing near me, it hurt. And at that point in time, I was doing Joe Dispenza's meditations every morning with my husband. And so we were at this doing these 45-minute meditations, and I'd put my mask on, and I turned the meditation on, and the Lord said, do your spoon meditation. So one of the things I'd stopped doing is I can bend a spoon. You hold the spoon, it's not there anymore. You take it all apart, the white light comes in, and you say, bend, bend, bend. You can bend and twist the spoon, because it doesn't really exist. So it was one of my things that I started doing after my near-death experience. And sort of for me to understand how powerful we are. And then I thought, well, this is like a party trick. Everyone, oh, Laurie, go bend the spoons. And I thought, what am I doing this for? I didn't get it. It was like, what is it? Like, I didn't want to turn God into a party trick. So I stopped doing it. So the Lord's like, use your spoon meditation. And I knew instantly what he was talking about. And I took apart my shoulder completely, and I built it all together. At the end of the 45 minutes, I got up, and my shoulder was 100% completely healed. I could put my hands behind my back, over my head. It was crazy. My husband was just standing there with his mouth hanging open, like just totally in shock. So I know that we have the ability to heal. That was not a one-off thing. We have that ability, but how do we get there? Like for me to get there now is very hard because there's that part of you. Is it really true? Can you really do that? How do you really do it? And so without the Lord guiding me at those moments, I still question my own ability to be able to do that type of thing. That's part of what 11 does, is that we are going to be able to do that. And that's what I want to teach. As soon as 11 really gets off and it's going, I want to delve into that healing aspect of ourselves, between the leaves of the trees and the grass and all the healthy foods and things that we can eat. How can we also just heal ourselves with energy and mind? How do we heal our spirit, our mind, our body, the earth? And that's our goal in 11, is to really research all that.
Romans chapter 8, verse 11. I just looked it up. And the Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you.
Well, he tells his disciples, he sent the disciples out to do the same thing, to heal by just putting your hands on someone, to heal the blind, to get someone who's crippled from birth walking again. And that's where I want us to go.
I really just like the first part of this. Honestly, it says, the Spirit of God who raised Jesus from the dead lives in you. And just as God raised Christ from the dead, he will give life to your mortal bodies. It's so interesting that they separate these things in conversation, in language, right? If it's saying that it lives within you, he lives within you, right? Then that means, in part, in essence, we are extensions of God.
Yeah.
Right? From my Christian upbringing, I had this idea that, like, there's me, this individualized sense of me, right? And then there's God elsewhere. Elsewhere. And in order for me to do anything in the power of God, I had to be like doing things right for like God to be present with me in order to like enable me to call on the power of God. Right. And it's that idea of separation is so wrong. It's like a delusion. It's a delusion that has been normalized. This is the societal standard idea in Christianity of God and human.
Yeah.
We're these weak human vessels that are nothing without God. And where that is true on some level, we cannot exist in our humanness without God already residing within us.
Yeah.
And I think that is a misconception.
Yeah. I think that's one of the things we're here, is to discover that we live inside of God all the time, and God lives inside of us. We are not separate, every single aspect of us. So that energy is all God. So that energy that's feeding us is all God. God is in and is all of it. And so when you get to this oneness feeling where you understand it, it's very hard to be ever miserable and unhappy. It doesn't mean I don't have some bad days and I'm like, oh my gosh, is this happening again? And then it's just like, thy will be done. Because out of some of the worst things that's ever happened to me, the best things have ever happened to me. And that's where we can't see. We have just this little narrow box of our lives that we're going in this like trajectory, but we can't see the huge bigger picture that the Lord has for us. So even when I'm saying my prayers for people, I say that, thy will be done, because the Lord sees, he's in us, he's experienced our life with us. And so that if we pay attention to that, if we know the Lord is in us and doing what we're doing, how many bad things would we not do if we really understood every second of every day of every year you're going to experience with the Lord in the other world without judgment? It's not like the Lord's going shame on you. It's like, how do you feel about that? He's never not watching. He's never not participating with us.
Isn't that a miracle? That's amazing. This whole entire life thing is such a miracle.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I just went to a funeral on Saturday, and that was the great thing about doing hospice. I loved hospice. The other world is so close at that point. The angels, you can feel the angels coming in the room. The lights will flicker on and off. Like if you're in tune to it, it is just amazing. And when that person passes, because I've had a near death experience, I know that they're in just such bliss. When a person dies, they're in absolute bliss. It's just like I have such a different perspective of what death looks like and is. And I think that's why I loved hospice so much, because I could bring that solace to people who were passing. It's like, you're going to have the top experience of your life.
Exactly. And I say that all the time because I think it's interesting that as a whole, like a collective society, we have this knee-jerk reaction to avoid thoughts of death, to
Yeah.
avoid talking about death. We, get really uncomfortable. This is such a strange reaction considering what it actually is. It's
Yeah.
one of the most beautiful aspects of life, something that we all get the opportunity. We should see it as something that is a positive transition, like we celebrate a birthday, right? It's
Yeah.
like celebrating the other transition day. If you actually knew,
Yeah.
like a lot of the near death experiencers that I interview are like, I mean, I'm in no rush to transition. I'm here for a reason. I want to live out that purpose. And however, when that day comes, I am looking forward to it. Some excitement that I just like will never shake. And it's like, I'm super glad that we're coming together and having these conversations and changing that narrative. Because
Yeah.
if collectively, as a whole of humanity, if we could start to deteriorate the narrative that death is something to be uncomfortable, to be
Yeah.
feared, and to shy away from, if we can deteriorate that narrative, imagine how much less fear would
Yeah.
be in the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's where I'm headed with this. That's why the Lord had me do hospice.
And that's why I'm doing this.
Yes.
Okay. I know that you're very passionate about this mission that you're on. If you were to say what a mission statement is, not necessarily for your project, but
Yep.
like for your purpose in life, how you want to impact the world, or if there was a piece of advice that you would want to give people, what would that be?
So the universe, uni, one verse song. So it's one song. And if people could just understand it, we're all part of that one song. And we all have the notes to sing, that every single person out there is important. Every single person's adding to that song of the universe. As we grow, we all collectively grow. So every single nice thing that you do, saying hi, telling someone they have a beautiful smile, going out of your way to make somebody else feel loved, not saying the negative thing that you want to say out of that egocentric part of yourself, but the kindness. Because guess what? When you get to the other world, you want to experience in your life review a lot more of the lovely things that you did than the unkind things. And if you realize we are all the same family, we came into this world with our song to sing. And I wish that everyone could find that purpose, that meaning, and sing their song to their ultimate. And you're going to sing out of tune, and you're going to have a solo, and you're going to be the harmony, and you're going to play every single part of that song, but sing your song. Don't go to your deathbed with your song unsung, where you say, I wish I would have done that. I wish I would have been nicer. I wish I would have worked less and spent time with my family. I wish I would have been kinder to my children or my grandchildren or my spouse. Do the things that are going to make you the most proud and contribute to this world that we live in. This is the butterfly effect. Every single thing you do affects the universal consciousness, everything, every word you say, every thought you think. And so if my one wish for humanity and society is that we could bring that consciousness into effect. And it's one thing that we hope to do with our company 11 is the healthier we get, the more spiritual we get. If we have healthy lives, then the planet, our spirituality will be healthy.
Thank you. That was wonderful. I am in so much alignment with your mission. I very much appreciate that you are listening to the call and doing what you need to do to bring that from the idea into material that is going to give people the ability to find solutions for those real source of problems versus that band-aid on the surface causing more issues down the road. I really truly believe that our society, our world does need that being healthier, like I appreciate that. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Laurie, for taking time out of your day and having this conversation with me.
Thank you, Nella. This was amazing. Great conversation with you. I think what you're doing is just such a blessing to this world. Just keep on going, and I will send people your direction to listen to your podcast because you're needed. You're needed. This is absolutely needed in this world.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast. If you loved this episode, please consider leaving a review. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe so we don't lose each other. And to share the link with somebody who can appreciate this message. Blessings to you all, and I hope to catch you on my next episode.